My parents told everyone I was a failure. When Grandpa left me $5.2 million, they dragged me into court. Then the judge opened a sealed military file. I never cared much about what my parents thought of me. That probably sounds strange coming from a 35-year-old man, but after a certain point, disappointment becomes background noise. My name is Ethan Walker. According to my parents, I was the family embarrassment. My younger brother was the success story. He owned a luxury real estate company in Arizona. He drove expensive cars. He posted photos from yacht parties. He was everything my parents loved. Meanwhile, I spent most of my adult life moving from one military assignment to another. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I rarely came home. And because I couldn't talk about most of my work, my family simply assumed I didn't do anything important. At family gatherings, my father would introduce me with a laugh. This is Ethan. He's still figuring life out. Everyone would chuckle. I would smile politely. And Grandpa Henry would quietly roll his eyes. Grandpa was the only person in the family who never judged me. Every Sunday he called. Every Christmas he mailed handwritten letters. Every birthday he remembered. He never once asked how much money I made. He never once asked why I wasn't married. Instead, he asked questions like, are you sleeping enough? Have you been eating properly? Are you happy? Simple questions. Questions that made you feel like a human being instead of a resume. 3 years before he died, his health started declining. My parents visited him exactly twice. My brother visited once. I visited whenever I could. Sometimes that meant driving 6 hours after work. Sometimes it meant taking leave. Sometimes it meant sleeping on a couch and returning before sunrise. I never regretted it. Then one cold February morning, my phone rang. The hospital. Grandpa had passed away during the night. 84 years old. Peaceful. No pain. I remember sitting in my truck afterwards staring at the steering wheel. For a long time I didn't move. It felt like someone had quietly removed the last good thing holding my family together. The funeral happened 4 days later. My parents arrived in designer black clothing. My brother showed up wearing sunglasses worth more than my first car. People cried. Neighbors cried. Church friends cried. Even the pastor struggled through part of the service. My family didn't. Not once. The moment the ceremony ended, my father checked his watch. Then he turned to me. The estate meeting is Monday. That was the first thing he said. Not, how are you holding up? Not, I'm sorry for your loss. Just the estate. I should have realized then exactly where this was heading. Monday arrived. The attorney's office sat on the top floor of a brick building downtown. Old furniture, old books, old money. The kind of place that smelled expensive without trying. The attorney, Gerald Monroe, had handled Grandpa's affairs for nearly 15 years. He greeted us politely and invited everyone to sit. My parents looked confident. My brother looked excited. I looked tired. Gerald opened a folder. Then he began reading. The usual legal language came first. Then the financial details. Stocks, properties, investments, savings. The total estate value was approximately $5.2 million. My father's posture changed immediately. My brother leaned forward. Then Gerald reached the final section. I hereby leave all assets, accounts, properties, and investments to my grandson, Ethan Walker. Silence. Complete silence. For about 3 seconds nobody moved. Then my father exploded. What? The word echoed through the room. My brother stood up so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. This has to be a mistake. It is not, Gerald replied calmly. My mother stared at me. Not shocked. Angry. The kind of anger people feel when reality refuses to follow their plans. My father pointed directly at me. He manipulated an old man. Gerald sighed. No, he absolutely did. No, he stole our inheritance. Gerald removed his glasses. Your father changed his will 2 years ago. What? He changed it after reviewing certain financial concerns. My father went pale. Only for a second. Then the color returned. We'll challenge it. Gerald nodded. That is your legal right. My brother laughed. Ethan can't afford a legal battle. I almost smiled. They still thought I was broke. Still thought I was some drifting military nobody. I said nothing. That was my favorite part. The silence. Because silence allows people to reveal themselves. And my family revealed everything. The lawsuit arrived 8 days later. They claimed Grandpa lacked mental capacity. They claimed I manipulated him. They claimed fraud, undue influence, financial exploitation. Every accusation they could imagine. Most people would have panicked. I didn't. Because unlike my family, I understood investigations. I understood evidence. And most importantly, I understood courtrooms. For the next month I built a case. Medical records, witness statements, financial documents, phone records, everything. Then I found something unexpected. Something that changed the entire situation. Grandpa hadn't disinherited my parents because he loved me more. He had disinherited them because he knew something. Something dangerous. Something expensive. Something that could destroy them. The proof sat inside a folder nearly 3 inches thick. And the deeper I dug, the worse it became. By the time court arrived, I wasn't worried about losing. I was worried about what would happen when the truth finally came out. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Thursday. My parents arrived with a famous attorney. The kind who appeared on billboards. The kind who advertised settlements worth millions. He looked at me standing alone near the courtroom entrance. One folder. No legal team. No assistants. No visible preparation. He smiled. You representing yourself? Yes. His smile widened. That's brave. I smiled back. No, it's really not. And for the first time that morning, his smile faded. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Most people imagine courtrooms as giant chambers with dramatic architecture and rows of spectators. This wasn't like that. It was a county courtroom. Simple wooden benches, a judge's bench, 2 tables, a few observers, and enough silence to hear every mistake someone made. I arrived 20 minutes early, not because I was nervous, because being late had never been an option in my profession. Across the room, my parents sat beside their attorney, Richard Lawson, the billboard lawyer, the man with commercials promising massive settlements and aggressive representation. He looked confident, very confident, the kind of confidence that comes from believing the outcome is already decided. When he noticed me entering alone, he smiled. Again, the same smile from outside the courtroom, the smile that said, "You don't belong here." I returned the smile. That seemed to bother him more than I expected. At exactly 9 o'clock, the judge entered. Judge Catherine Reeves, early 60s, sharp eyes, no patience for nonsense. The courtroom stood, then sat. The hearing began. Lawson stood first. He spent nearly 20 minutes presenting my parents as victims. According to him, Grandpa Henry had been confused, vulnerable, manipulated, influenced by an opportunistic grandson who isolated him from the rest of the family. I listened quietly. My mother testified first. She was impressive. I have to admit that. If I didn't know her, I might have believed her. Her voice trembled. Her eyes watered. She described years of love and devotion emotion. She talked about family dinners, holiday visits, phone calls, support, care. Listening to her felt like hearing someone describe a completely different family, a better family, one that had never actually existed. When Lawson finished questioning her, the judge looked toward me. Mr. Walker, would you like to cross-examine the witness? No, Your Honor. The judge raised an eyebrow. Lawson smiled. My mother looked relieved. Then my father testified. That was harder to watch. Not because it hurt, because it was embarrassing. He described me as unstable, distant, selfish, obsessive, a son who had abandoned his family, a grandson who had manipulated an elderly man for money. Every sentence sounded rehearsed. Every answer sounded practiced. Lawson guided him perfectly. The entire testimony had clearly been prepared in advance. Again, the judge looked toward me. Cross-examination? No questions. Another smile from Lawson, a larger one this time. Then my younger brother took the stand. Jason, the golden child, the successful one, the favorite. He claimed Grandpa had become forgetful, confused, easy to influence. When asked for examples, he offered stories from years earlier, stories that had nothing to do with Grandpa's final months, but Lawson presented them dramatically, as if they proved everything. When Jason finished, the judge looked at me once more. No questions, Mr. Walker? No, Your Honor. This time even my brother smiled. I could almost hear what they were thinking. He's scared. He has nothing. We're winning. That assumption would become very expensive. After lunch, Lawson called his final witness, a medical consultant, a doctor who had reviewed records and concluded Grandpa had likely experienced age-related cognitive decline. Not dementia, not incompetence, just decline. Enough to create doubt. At least that was the goal. The testimony lasted almost 40 minutes. When it ended, Lawson stood proudly. The plaintiff's rest, Your Honor. Judge Reeves nodded. Then she turned toward me. Mr. Walker. I stood. The room became quiet. Do you intend to present a defense? Yes, Your Honor. Call your first witness. I looked at the judge. No witnesses. That got everyone's attention. Lawson blinked. No witnesses? No. Then what exactly do you intend to present? I lifted a single black folder. This. A few people laughed softly. Even Jason smirked. One folder. Against months of legal preparation. Against expert testimony. Against an experienced attorney. It looked ridiculous, which was exactly why I had planned it that way. The bailiff carried the folder to Judge Reeves. She opened it, then began reading. The first page took only a few seconds. The second page took longer. The third page longer still. Something changed in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. Professional recognition. The kind that happens when someone suddenly realizes they misunderstood the situation. The courtroom noticed it too. Judge Reeves looked up. Her eyes settled on me. Mr. Walker. Yes, Your Honor. This document is authentic? It is. Verified? Yes. The judge nodded slowly, then looked back down. Lawson shifted in his seat. For the first time all day, he looked uncertain. What exactly are we looking at, Your Honor? The judge didn't answer immediately. She continued reading, page after page. The silence stretched. My father began fidgeting. Jason stopped smiling. My mother looked confused. Finally, Judge Reeves closed the folder. Then she removed her glasses. Mr. Lawson. Yes, Your Honor? Did you know your opposing party served in military intelligence? The room froze. Lawson frowned. What? Judge Reeves repeated herself. Did you know that Mr. Walker served 14 years in military intelligence operations? My father's face went blank. Jason laughed nervously. Military intelligence? The judge ignored him. She continued reading from the document. Multiple overseas deployments. Another pause. Defense commendations. Another pause. Federal investigative certifications. Another pause. Then the line that changed everything. Lead investigator on several multi-million-dollar financial fraud operations. Lawson's face lost color. Not dramatically. Gradually. Like someone turning down a dimmer switch. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Possibly for the first time. And suddenly understood something. I wasn't a confused heir defending an inheritance. I was a professional investigator. Someone who spent years building cases. Someone trained to identify lies. Someone trained to follow money. Someone trained to collect evidence. The judge closed the folder. Mr. Walker. Yes, Your Honor. Would you like to explain why you've submitted this document? I nodded, then stood. Finally, after an entire day of silence, I spoke. Because, Your Honor, the plaintiffs built their entire case around the assumption that my grandfather was manipulated. The courtroom listened. But after his death, I discovered something much more interesting. I opened my own copy of the folder and turned to the first tab. My grandfather wasn't afraid of me. I looked directly at my father. He was afraid of what he had learned about them. The room went completely silent. And for the first time since this case began, my parents looked nervous. Very nervous. Because the next piece of evidence was about to reveal a secret Grandpa had spent 2 years documenting. A secret worth millions. And once it entered the court record, there would be no way to take it back. The secret Grandpa took to his grave. The silence inside the courtroom felt heavier than before. A few minutes earlier, my parents had looked confident, victorious, even. Now they looked uncertain. My father sat rigidly in his chair. My brother's arms were crossed so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. And Richard Lawson, the attorney who had spent the entire morning treating me like an amateur, was staring at the folder in my hands as if it had suddenly become dangerous. Which, in a way, it had. I opened the first section. Your Honor, 2 years before his death, my grandfather hired a private forensic accountant. The judge leaned forward. My father's head snapped toward me. What? I ignored him. The accountant's name was Michael Grayson. 23 years of experience investigating financial fraud. I handed the report to the bailiff. The document traveled to the judge. She began reading. The courtroom became silent again. Page after page. Numbers, transactions, bank transfers, business records, patterns, evidence. Then Judge Reeves looked up. Mr. Walker, this report alleges over $3 million in unauthorized transfers. Yes, Your Honor. My father stood instantly. That's absurd. Sit down, Mr. Walker, the judge said. He sat. Barely. I continued. My grandfather discovered unusual activity involving several family investment accounts. My brother shifted in his chair. The movement was small, but I noticed. Investigators always notice. The investigation found that funds were repeatedly transferred into businesses controlled by my brother. Jason's face lost color. His attorney slowly turned toward him. That was the first crack. The first moment Lawson realized he had not been told everything. And once that happens, everything starts falling apart. I opened the second section. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit B. The judge accepted it. More paperwork, more records, more signatures, more dates. Then she stopped. Her eyes narrowed. These signatures. Yes, they appeared appear to belong to your grandfather. They do. A pause. According to the handwriting experts, every one of them was forged. The room exploded. My mother gasped. My father jumped to his feet. Jason began speaking at the same time. 3 voices. 1 courtroom. Total chaos. Enough. Judge Reeves slammed the gavel. Silence returned immediately. The judge looked directly at Jason. Mr. Walker, do you deny these allegations? Jason swallowed. For the first time all day, he didn't answer immediately. That hesitation said more than any testimony. Lawson looked horrified. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his own clients, trying to figure out whether they had lied to him, trying to figure out how much trouble he was in, trying to figure out how badly this case had just gone off the rails. I continued. My grandfather discovered the transfers 18 months before he changed his will. I turned another page. He documented everything. Another page. Every account. Another page. Every transaction. Another page. Every suspicious withdrawal. The judge read quietly. Then she asked the question that mattered. Why didn't he report it immediately? I smiled sadly. Because I knew the answer. Because Grandpa had told me himself. He hoped they would stop. The courtroom fell silent again. He thought if he confronted them privately, they would fix it. I looked toward my parents. They didn't. No one spoke. Not even my father. He gave them chance after chance. Another pause. Then he realized they weren't making mistakes. I looked at Jason. They were stealing. My brother lowered his eyes. That told the judge everything. The next 30 minutes were devastating. For them. Not for me. For them. Lawson requested a recess. Denied. He attempted objections. Overruled. He challenged authenticity. The forensic reports answered every challenge. He questioned motives. The documents answered those too. One by one. Every argument collapsed. Every explanation failed. Every excuse died. Eventually Judge Reeves looked at Jason. Did you move these funds? No answer. Mr. Walker? Still nothing. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 15. 20. Then Jason spoke. Quietly. Barely above a whisper. Yes. The word landed like a bomb. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked stunned. Lawson closed his eyes. And just like that, the case was over. Not legally. Emotionally. The moment Jason admitted the truth, everything changed. The lawsuit no longer looked like concerned family members protecting an elderly man. Now it looked exactly like what it was. A desperate attempt to recover money they thought belonged to them. The judge spent nearly 15 minutes reviewing the remaining documents. Nobody interrupted. Nobody objected. Nobody even moved. Finally she placed the final page on top of the stack. Then she looked toward my parents. Your father changed his will because he no longer trusted you. No response. The evidence supporting that decision is overwhelming. Silence. The plaintiffs have failed to prove undue influence. Silence. They have failed to prove incapacity. Silence. They have failed to prove fraud. My father looked like he had aged 10 years. Then the judge delivered the final blow. The will is upheld in its entirety. A pause. The estate remains with Ethan Walker. Another pause. Then came the part nobody expected. Furthermore, the courtroom froze. Judge Reeves looked directly at the evidence. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review of possible criminal conduct related to financial fraud, forgery, and false testimony. My mother's eyes widened. My father stared at the judge. Jason looked physically sick. And Richard Lawson looked like a man calculating how quickly he could distance himself from all 3 of them. The gavel came down. Case dismissed. That was it. Finished. Over. The courtroom slowly began emptying. People gathered papers. Chairs moved. Conversations started. I packed my folder. For a moment I thought maybe we would leave without speaking. I was wrong. My father approached first. For once, he didn't look angry. He looked defeated. Ethan. I looked up. He struggled to find words. Any words. Finally he managed one sentence. You should have told us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. After everything. After the lies. After the lawsuit. After the accusations. That was his conclusion. I shook my head. No. He frowned. No. You should have listened. For a second, he looked like he wanted to argue. Then he realized he couldn't. Because he knew I was right. My mother approached next. Tears finally appeared. Real ones this time. Not courtroom tears. Not performance tears. Actual tears. We're family. The words sounded weak. Fragile. Broken. I looked at her for a long moment. Then answered honestly. Grandpa was family. Neither of them had a response. I walked away. 6 months later, the investigations were still ongoing. Several accounts had been frozen. Jason's business was under review. The district attorney had opened a formal inquiry. I didn't follow every update. I didn't need to. My life moved forward. I kept Grandpa's house. I renovated the kitchen. I repaired the porch he loved sitting on. I kept his old rocking chair exactly where it had always been. Some evenings, after work, I sat there with a cup of coffee and watched the sunset, just like he used to. One day I found a letter hidden inside a drawer. A letter addressed to me. His handwriting. His words. His final message. It was short. Only a few lines. But I still remember every word. Ethan, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. Don't waste your life trying to earn approval from people who already decided not to give it. The people who truly love you never require you to prove your worth. I was proud of you long before anyone else understood who you were. Love, Grandpa. I sat on that porch for a long time after reading it, watching the sun disappear below the horizon, holding the letter, thinking about everything that had happened. The lawsuit, the lies, the betrayal, the inheritance, the courtroom. None of it was what mattered most, because in the end, the greatest thing Grandpa left me wasn't $5 million. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the investments. It wasn't the victory. It was the certainty that at least one person in this world had always seen me clearly. And sometimes, that's worth more than any inheritance money could ever be.